Today we're going to show you a real quick way to sew these two curved pieces together. You can see that they look like they won't fit at all, but with the magic of a sewing machine and some scissors and some pins, we'll be able to fit them right together. Okay, so these are cut out according to pattern pieces. I'm going to call this piece the inside curve because it's got the inside curve, which is the curve that's on the inside of the piece. And this one's going to be the outside curve because the curve is on the outside of this piece of fabric. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my inside curve piece and just snip some little snips in the inside curve, maybe 1/4 of an inch apart and maybe like 1/8 of an inch long. You don't want them to be very long because you don't want it to go into the seam allowance. But you can see when you stretch this out, it makes it kind of, it makes you able to have this flat and straight. The outside curve piece gets no little snips on it because it has a better ability to flex. So the first thing you're going to do after you have cut the snips in the inside curve is you're going to take your two pieces, put them right sides together, and then put a pin in them. And the idea here is to make sure that these two edges line up straight and stay straight. Then you're going to fold this around, and regardless of what it looks like in the center, you can see that's kind of weird looking. You're going to line up the two other sides. And you're going to put a pin in that, again, so that the outside edges line up and they're going to stay lined up with each other. Now what I'm going to do is stretch this inside curve piece around so that it fits the outside curve piece. And I want this piece to be, the inside piece to be on the top because it's going to get all ruffly and very strange looking. And I want to be able to see it, make sure that it's lining up, that the raw edges are lining up with the outside curve piece, and that I'm not pinning it so that I'm pinning those puckers in it. So I'll take it and stretch it just a little bit and put a pin in it. And then I'm going to take the opposite side, stretch it just a little bit, make sure that it's flat, and put a pin in that side next. Now we're going to do some pretty decent stretching of the inside piece. Make sure that the outside piece is matching up with it. And I'm going to use my finger to tuck it around. It's easier to put a little mountain kind of a thing in it. It seems like it's easier to stretch it out and get it flat as I pin it. And I'm going to put a decent number of pins in it, but again, not so many that I'm going to end up sewing any puckers in them. Tricky part is to make sure that I don't pin my fingers. And then I'm going to pin one more here. Now I've got all these pins, and when I lay it flat, you can see that there's still kind of little ruffly things in it, but within 1/4 of an inch, it's mostly flat. So now I'm just going to put it under my presser foot. And for these curves, I leave the pins in because that way the fabric continues to stay lined up on the raw edges. And I'm going to sew slow enough that hopefully I won't catch my sewing machine needle on any of these pins and break my needle. I know I'm taking a chance of breaking a needle. On the other hand, I'd rather take that chance than get this fabric out of alignment. Now that I've gotten about 1/4 of an inch sewn in it, this fabric is pretty stabilized in the presser foot, so I'm not going to hold on to here, making sure that it goes through. What I'm going to do now is kind of anchor it and I'm going to have to start curving this part of it, the part that still needs to be sewn. That's going to be guided through as it curves around. And while I'm doing all of that, I'm making sure that these puckers are kind of flattened out and that I'm not sewing any puckers into the seam allowance as I make those curves. Now that one's done. If you have more blocks that you're going to sew, then you can continue to sew add them on as if you were chain sewing. I'm going to take this one out so we can look at it. So you're going to take it out, trim the threads off both sides, remove the pins, and then open it up. And take a look at it. You can see it's kind of standing up and it needs to be flattened out. All of this will smooth out as long as you don't see any puckers or folds that have been actually sewn in. You can smooth it all out with your iron. And then too, you're going to have to decide whether your seam allowance is, which direction your seam allowance is going to be pressed in. I think usually it's easier to press it so that it folds the inside curve under and leaves the outside curve flat. In this case, that'll work out really well because my darker fabric has the inside curve on it. So then I'm ready to press it, make sure that it's all square, and and this patch is ready to be sewn into a block.